Usually when we think about a battlefield, we picture something straight out of a movie, right?
Oh yeah, like trenches, barricades.
Exactly. Like a clear line in the sand. You know exactly where the threat is actually coming from.
Right, it's a visible, defined conflict. The perimeter is totally obvious.
But when you look at modern urban living, specifically in a place like, Houston, Texas, that perimeter just completely vanishes.
It really does.
The battlefield isn't out there somewhere in the woods. It is literally right above your head. It's beneath your floorboards.
Yeah, people don't realize.
We are looking at this wild, completely hidden ecosystem operating entirely in the shadows of our own homes. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
For you listening, our mission today is to really figure out how human architecture is constantly clashing with Mother Nature. And we're looking at the elite operations required to keep that wild ecosystem outside where it actually belongs.
Quite the operation, too.
It really is. We are pulling our insights today from a really fascinating stack of sources. We've got the actual service protocols, operational highlights, and field logs of this highly specialized Houston wildlife control company called the Critter Team.
Yeah, their data is just incredible to look through.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you own a home or a business, that faint scratching sound you hear in the ceiling at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, don't ignore that.
Right. It is not just a minor annoyance. That sound is a ticking clock. It's a countdown to severe structural damage and, honestly, some genuinely alarming health risks.
Absolutely. And to really understand what a specialized company is up against, we have to look at the environment itself first. I mean, Houston is a unique beast biologically.
Oh, for sure. The weather alone.
Right, you have this subtropical humidity combined with incredibly mild winters. What that means on a fundamental level is that wildlife never really takes a season off.
Like, there's no winter break for them.
Exactly. There is no hard, prolonged freeze that forces, a massive hibernation cycle. They just stay active. They're always foraging, always greeting, always looking for a more secure shelter.
And the geography of Houston seems to, actively funnel them inward. I mean, the city is bisected by these massive waterways. Buffalo Bayou, White Oak Bayou.
Greens Bayou, Brays Bayou.
Yeah.
Look at a network.
Well, in nature, a waterway is a transit corridor. But in a densely paved city, these bayous basically act as natural high-speed superhighways.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they funnel raccoons, opossums, rats, snakes straight out of the wild and deliver them directly into heavily populated residential neighborhoods. The bayous are essentially like supply lines for the urban wildlife army.
Which brings us to the first major point of conflict, the houses themselves. If we have this constant pressure from the outside, we really have to look at how these animals are actually breaching the perimeter. Because clearly, standard housing construction is not holding up to the assault. It's really not. The vulnerability depends on the age and style of the neighborhood. But almost every home has a weak point. Let's take older historic areas like the Heights, for instance.
Oh, beautiful homes.
Gorgeous, but they have settling foundations. As a heavy structure settles into that soft Houston soil over decades, microfractures appear. Fascia boards begin to warp.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, and you have aging soffits, which is that exposed siding underneath your roof's overhang. They soften and rot from years of absorbing Houston's intense humidity. It creates these incredibly easy, pliable access points.
But looking at the sources, it's not just the century-old houses crumbling. The logs mention frequent dispatches to newer, high-end construction out in places like Champions Forest.
Oh, the new builds are just as bad, sometimes worse.
Right. If builders are slapping flimsy plastic vents on these expensive homes, it seems like the animals wouldn't even need to be that smart to get in. They just need to be persistent.
That is exactly the issue. Newer construction relies heavily on what we call builder-grade vents.
Which are just the cheapest option.
Basically, they're mass-produced, relatively flimsy plastic or lightweight aluminum vents. They're installed by the thousands across subdivisions just to meet basic building codes for airflow. They aren't designed to withstand a determined animal.
It's like putting a cardboard door on a bank vault.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Right. Like, sure, from the street, it looks like a door. It technically closes the hole. But if someone genuinely wants what's inside, it's only a matter of time before they just push right through the cardboard.
Exactly. And within months of a house being built, squirrels and roof rats do exactly that. They push right through those plastic slats.
Man, that's wild.
And this widespread vulnerability is why standard pest control often fails, and why a company like the Critter Team was built with such specific, almost tactical approach.
Well, let's talk about their background, because this is where the operational standards really start to make sense. The Critter team was founded in June 2015 by Mike Garrett, and he didn't just buy a ladder and a trap and, call himself a wildlife expert. He is actually a 20-year United States Army veteran.
And that military background directly translates into their operational precision. Before launching this veteran-owned operation in Houston, Garrett actually trained under specialized wildlife operators in Virginia and Florida.
So he really put in the time.
He did. He brought a rigorous, systematic approach to urban wildlife control that really mirrors military problem solving.
And looking at their credentials, I mean, those standards are intense. They are fully licensed and insured for wildlife control in the state of Texas. We're talking $1 million per occurrence and $2 million in aggregate liability coverage.
Plus full workers' compensation.
Right, which is huge. But the detail in these operational highlights that really changes the game for the homeowner is their staffing model.
The 100% in-house requirement.
Yeah, because if you hire a typical contractor, you never quite know who is going to show up. They might sub out the roofing repair to one guy, the trapping to another.
It gets messy.
But the Critter team uses absolutely zero subcontractors. Every single job is performed by their own technicians. The logs specifically mention guys like Jeff, Julio, Tad, and Chris handling everything from start to finish.
Using an entirely in-house team creates this unbroken chain of accountability. When you're dealing with a compromised physical structure and live, unpredictable animals, you just cannot afford a breakdown in communication.
Because the guy patching the roof needs to know what the trapping guy found.
Exactly. Between the person who inspected the attic, the person who placed the traps, and the person fabricating the metal to fix the roof, they have to be on the same page.
So by keeping it all under one roof, they maintain strict quality control from that first frantic phone call to the final warranty on the structural repair.
Right.
Okay, so we know the architecture is practically inviting them in, and we know who the frontline defenders are. Let's look at the first wave of invaders attacking the upper levels, the roofline infiltration. We're talking specifically about squirrels and roof rats.
In a place like Houston, the trees are their launch pads. The city has this beautiful, massive canopy network of mature live oaks and pecan trees.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, and when those branches overhang a roof, squirrels don't even have to touch the ground to commute. They just jump straight from the canopy directly onto your shingles.
And once they land, they don't just hang out and enjoy the view. They target those soft connections we talked about, right where the soffit meets the shingles, and their teeth just go to work.
Because rodents' teeth constantly grow, they literally have to chew to file them down.
Huh.
I know. And once they breach the exterior and get inside the attic, that chewing mechanism doesn't stop. They gnaw on the wooden framing, they compress and ruin the thermal insulation by nesting in it. But the most critical and immediate danger is the electrical wiring.
The data provided from K-State Research and Extension on this is terrifying.
It really is.
They document these specific squirrel damage patterns, showing how they strip the plastic insulation right off the copper wires. The result is that exposed wiring from squirrel chewing is an absolute leading cause of attic electrical fires in residential homes.
You wouldn't even know what's happening until you smell smoke.
Exactly. It is a completely silent threat hidden under the insulation. And then exploiting the exact same roofline vulnerabilities, often using the holes the squirrels already started, you have roof rats.
Oh, roof rats.
I was reading their behavioral profiles, and they are relentless. They travel along fence lines, utility cables, tree branches, and because of that warm, humid climate we mentioned earlier, they're breeding year-round.
There's no pause button on their population growth.
None.
Furthermore, their physical flexibility is just astonishing. A roof rat only needs a gap the size of a dime to squeeze its entire body indoors.
A dime! That is horrifying.
Yeah, if its skull can fit, its ribcage collapses enough to follow. And once inside, the health risks escalate rapidly. The EPA explicitly outlines the public health dangers associated with rats in residential settings.
Right, because of the waste.
Exactly. Their droppings in urine heavily contaminate the attic insulation. As that waste dries, airborne pathogens can easily be pulled into your HVAC system through tiny gaps in your ductwork.
So it's spreading right into the air you're breathing in your living room.
Yep.
Now, if rats and squirrels are such a devastating menace, literally causing fires and spreading airborne diseases, why does this company's protocol heavily emphasize poison-free methods? Because a lot of people's first instinct is just to go buy the strongest poison available and obliterate them.
What's fascinating here is the physical mechanism of how poison actually works and how it completely backfires.
Okay, lay it on me.
If you use a rodenticide, The rat doesn't instantly die in a neat, easily accessible spot in the middle of the attic floor. The poison takes time. The animal feels sick. It seeks out a dark, hidden place to protect itself, and it crawls deep into a wall void or under the floorboards to die.
Oh no, so you end up with a rotting carcass trapped inside your architecture.
Precisely. Now you have a massive biohazard decaying behind your drywall. It creates this horrific, lingering odor that can last for months. It attracts swarms of blowflies, and it can even stain the ceiling as the body breaks down.
Wow, so the DIY cure is actually way worse than the disease.
100%. Instead of poison, the critter team focuses on humane trapping to physically remove the living population first. And once the animals are cleared out, they move to the exclusion phase, which is where that military-grade repair comes in. They don't just, staple some chicken wire over the hole.
Right, they focus on heavy-duty structural fortification. They literally bring a metal brake to the job site.
Which is pretty rare for standard pest control.
Very. And let me explain a metal brake for anyone who hasn't worked in siding or roofing. It's this heavy, specialized piece of machinery used to precisely bend and shape sheet metal. The critter team technicians use this machine right on your driveway to fabricate 23-gauge aluminum.
Custom bent for your house.
Exactly. They custom bend the metal to perfectly contour to your specific roof line, permanently sealing those openings. They even paint it to match the house aesthetics, and they back all of that proofing with a written warranty.
It really elevates the process from basic pest control to legitimate structural engineering.
It does. So we've got rats and squirrels slipping through dime-sized gaps. But, nature abhors a vacuum. If a rat can make a small hole, it's only a matter of time before a larger animal realizes that weakened spot is an easy target.
The small holes become literal open doors for the heavyweights.
Exactly. Let's talk about raccoons.
Raccoons possess incredible upper body strength and remarkably high intelligence.
They really do.
In late winter, pregnant females become desperate to find a safe, warm nesting site to raise their litters, safe from ground predators. They will physically tear through a water-damaged soffit with their claws.
Just rip it open?
Oh, yeah. Or they'll go to the top of the roof and completely rip off one of those 30 by 30 round mushroom vents.
They just pop the vent off like a bottle cap. It's crazy. And once a female raccoon has a litter hidden deep in the attic, the removal process becomes incredibly delicate.
Because if you just trap the mother and take her away, you've left a litter of helpless babies hidden in the insulation.
Which is cruel, but also a massive problem for the homeowner.
Right. They will eventually starve, creating that exact same biohazard rotting situation we discussed with the poison.
So this is where that humane protocol is not just about being kind to animals. It is structurally necessary. The sources detail how humanely removing them means utilizing specialized live traps, checking them methodically, and ensuring the entire family unit, the nursing mother, and the litter are kept together during the removal process.
And once the family is out, the decontamination phase is critical. The CDC has a very strict warning regarding raccoons. Their feces carry Bayous roundworm eggs.
That is a really serious parasitic disease.
Very serious. And the microscopic eggs are incredibly resilient. The literature shows they can survive in your attic insulation for years, long after the raccoon itself has been removed. You have to remove the contaminated insulation entirely and sanitize the space.
Wow. But raccoons aren't the only heavyweights pushing into the perimeter. We also have to talk about the animals that are actively hunting the rodents.
Ah, yes. The reptilian predators. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, the TPWD, identifies several venomous snake species thriving right there in Harris County.
Yeah, you have copperheads, cottonmouths, Texas coral snakes, and various rattlesnakes. But wait, let me stop you here. I had a massive aha moment reading these field logs.
Oh, yeah?
Snakes don't have hands to pry open vents. They definitely don't have teeth to chew through wood. So how and why on earth would a venomous snake end up inside a residential garage, or worse, just slithering around in an attic?
It's a great question, and it really reviews how ecosystems function indoors. A snake's behavior is governed by three basic motivations: hibernating, mating, or eating.
Okay.
If it's not the season to sleep or mate, that snake is actively following a food source.
So if there is a snake inside, it means there is food inside.
An indoor snake is almost always a symptom of a hidden rodent infestation.
That makes so much sense.
Right. A rat or a mouse found that dime-sized gap first, chewed its way in, and the snake simply slithered right through that exact same hole, following the rodent's scent trail.
The snake is the symptom, the rodent is the disease.
Perfectly said.
This is exactly why a critter team operator doesn't just show up, scoop up the snake, and leave. They identify the species on site to ensure safety, of course, but then they immediately start searching for the rodent breach. Because if you don't seal the entry points and remove the rodents, you're just going to have a revolving door of snakes following that scent trail into your house.
You absolutely have to eliminate the biological draw.
Okay, we've covered the roofline chewers, we've covered the heavyweights breaking in and the predators following them, but there is a whole different class of invaders operating at the highest altitudes of the architecture, the bats and the birds.
Yes.
And dealing with these requires navigating some severe health hazards and also some really strict federal laws.
That's right, because Houston sustains a massive, ecologically vital bat population. Just to give you an idea of the scale, there are over 250,000 Mexican free-tailed bats roosting right under the Wa Drive Bridge.
That is a lot of bats.
The environment supports them perfectly.
hmm
But inevitably, that population density spills over from the bridge into residential neighborhoods.
And they look for tiny gaps in residential fascia boards, specifically targeting the spaces where the brick siding meets the roofline, or looking for deteriorated mortar joints.
Because Houston is so hot and humid, building materials expand and contract constantly.
Right.
This thermal movement widens the gaps just enough for a bat to squeeze its tiny body into a wall void.
And once a bat colony establishes a roost inside a wall, the structural damage accelerates rapidly. The guano, their droppings, piles up fast.
So fast.
And the urine saturates the wood and insulation, creating this deeply pungent odor that gets pulled into the home's air circulation. Furthermore, the CDC identifies bats as the primary vector for rabies in Texas.
And exposure often happens through bites that people don't even realize they received while sleeping.
Because a bat's teeth are basically the size of needles.
Exactly.
So getting them out is an urgent, critical safety issue. But here's where it gets really interesting. I was looking at the critter team's bat exclusion protocols. They explicitly state they never use spray foam to seal the entry holes. Why is that? Because spray foam seems to be every homeowner's magical go-to fix for drafts and holes.
Reaching for a can of expanding spray foam when dealing with bats is a catastrophic mistake.
Let's hear it.
Let's look at the mechanism of what happens.
Yeah.
If you spray foam into that gap, you aren't just sealing the hole, you are trapping the live bats inside the wall. Yeah, they get physically stuck in the sticky, expanding foam. They suffocate or they starve inside the structure.
Oh, man. So you're right back to the biohazard problem, but multiplied by an entire colony.
Proper bat exclusion requires highly specialized skill. It must be done using one-way exclusion devices.
How does that work?
Think of these devices like a smooth funnel made of netting or PVC piping. The bat can easily slide down the smooth interior and drop out the bottom to fly away at night to feed.
Okay.
But when it returns, it cannot grip the smooth exterior material to climb back up through the narrow opening.
Yeah.
They are locked out naturally.
Oh, that's brilliant. And then the technicians permanently seal the gaps with breathable but impenetrable materials like copper mesh and custom metal.
Right. And crucially, this can only be done during specific legal exclusion windows. If you do it during maternity season, you lock the mothers out and trap the flightless baby bats inside to die.
This explains exactly why the critter team holds the elite NWCOA Bat Standard certification. To clarify for you listening, NWCOA stands for the National Wildlife Control Operators Association. Holding that certification means they are trained to execute these exclusions to strict, federally recognized standards.
You absolutely cannot leave this to an amateur with a ladder and a can of foam.
And that heavy legal compliance applies to birds, too.
It absolutely does. European starlings, pigeons, and house sparrows are notorious for nesting inside residential dryer vents and bathroom exhaust vents.
The birds shove dry grass and twigs deep into the metal dryer duct, and when the homeowner runs the dryer, the intense heat hits that dry nesting material, creating a massive, immediate fire hazard.
Plus, bird waste is highly acidic. It will physically corrode paint, concrete, and metal siding over time.
But you cannot simply climb up there and pull a nest out whenever you feel like it, right?
No, you can't. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service strictly enforces the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Several bird species in the Houston area are federally protected under this act.
So you actually have to navigate federal law just to clean out your own dryer vents.
You do. Operators must use legal, species-specific mitigation methods. This is why the critter team technicians hold specialized bird barrier certifications. They're trained in the mechanics of avian deterrence.
What kind of deterrence?
They install commercial-grade spiking systems on ledges so birds can't land, tension netting to block alcoves, and highly specialized bird-proof metal covers over exhaust vents.
Oh, I've seen
Yeah,
those.
these covers are engineered to keep the animals out while maintaining the crucial outward airflow the home's appliances need to function safely.
It really is an intricate blend of biology, structural engineering, and legal compliance. So we've secured the roof, we've decontaminated the attic, and we've legally excluded the bats and birds. But we cannot ignore the perimeter at ground level.
No, the ground game features an entirely different cast of troublemakers.
And judging by the logs, they require just as much expertise to handle.
The threats at ground level are just as destructive, though they operate differently. Take skunks, for example.
Okay, skunks.
They love to dig dens under concrete porches and raised pier and beam foundations. If a skunk feels threatened and sprays under your house, that highly volatile chemical odor doesn't just stay outside.
Oh, it gets inside.
Oh, yeah. It seeps upward, gets pulled straight into the floor vents of the HVAC system, and is rapidly pushed into every single room of the house.
I can't even imagine trying to live, let alone sleep, through that kind of chemical assault. And then you have the animals that basically act as landscaping destroyers, armadillos.
Armadillos have terrible eyesight, but an incredible sense of smell. They wander into residential yards and use their heavy claws to dig through the turf, actively hunting for grubs and earthworms. You go to sleep with a perfectly manicured lawn,
Yeah.
and you wake up to find it looks like a miniature minefield.
Just covered in dozens of deep cone-shaped holes.
Exactly.
Plus, you have the ultimate opportunists, opossums. The behavioral sources note that opossums aren't particularly great at breaking into a sealed structure themselves, but they will happily waltz right into any space. A raccoon, a skunk, or even a feral cat has already opened up under a deck or inside a detached garage.
And we also have to touch on the grim reality of dead animal removal, which is a significant part of their service calls.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Sometimes, despite a homeowner's best efforts, an animal gets inside a crawl space or falls down into a wall void and expires. The biological breakdown process creates an odor that is immediate, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore.
And the critter team handles that extraction too. They have to use their knowledge of air currents and architecture to physically locate the hidden carcass, cut into the wall if necessary, remove it, and chemically treat the area to neutralize the bacteria and the smell.
It's intense work.
So what does this all mean for you listening? When you pull all of this operational data together, you realize that dealing with wildlife in a massive, sprawling city like Houston isn't a weekend DIY project. It is a constant 365-day-a-year threat.
It demands a dedicated, highly professional response. You just cannot fight biology with half measures.
Which is exactly why Houston needs an exterminator alternative that doesn't just throw toxic poison at the problem, but focuses heavily on humane population management and permanent structural repair.
And because these wildlife emergencies don't happen on a convenient 9-to-5 schedule, the critter team answers their phones 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That includes holidays, right?
Yep, they offer same-day or next-day service across all of Houston, Harris County, and all those bayou transit corridors we talked about earlier.
Having that kind of rapid military-style deployment is critical. When you have a venomous copperhead cornered in your garage or a raccoon actively tearing apart your air conditioning ductwork, you don't have time to wait a week for an appointment.
Absolutely not.
So, if you are listening to this right now in the Houston area and you are suddenly realizing that weird scratch in your wall isn't just the house settling, you can actually look up their exact protocols. We pulled our sources directly from their service logs so you know exactly what kind of veteran-owned elite response you're getting.
They're of Humble, I believe.
They are. They operate right on FM 1960 Road East. So the full physical address is 6942 FM 1960 Road East, Suite 211, Humble, Texas 77346.
Got it.
And you can call them directly at 281-667-0171. Again, that is 281-667-0171.
It's definitely empowering to know exactly who to call when the perimeter is breached by forces you can't control.
For sure. To summarize today's deep dive, defending your home from urban wildlife is not just about setting a trap with some peanut butter.
Not at all.
It's an incredibly complex operation that requires deep biological knowledge of how these species think and hunt, the structural engineering capability to fabricate permanent metal barriers on site, and the rigorous credentials to navigate strict federal laws. It is a war fought in the absolute margins of our architecture.
And if I can leave you with one final thought, to ponder something that connects all these different species we've analyzed today.
I'd love to hear it.
We build these incredible modern homes to be perfectly durable and climate controlled for our own comfort, right?
Right?
We install continuous, seamless roof lines, deep underground plumbing networks, heavily insulated attics. But what if the very things we are building to protect ourselves from the elements are actually forcing local wildlife to rapidly evolve their behaviors?
Oh, wow.
What if our relentless pursuit of the perfect sealed indoor environment is exactly what is training them, generation by generation, to transition from simple forest dwellers into highly sophisticated structural squatters?
Oh man, that is a wild thought. We aren't just keeping nature out, we are actively providing the evolutionary pressure that makes it better at breaking in.
Food for thought.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Tonight, when the house goes completely quiet, look up at your own ceiling and listen closely to the shadows, because that hidden ecosystem, it never sleeps.